Hey, BassGeek here. We're going to talk about how Jacob Wheeler won on Gunnersville. Is it the top secret bait or is it the technique? I'm going to give you my opinion on it. Finally. That bigger bait, that may be the key. I still might have to lighten up on the weight because it's falling, I think, a little quick. But he sure took it. I wasn't ready for it. Are these bigger than average largemouth for this lake? It's probably 3 and some change. All right, guys, so I'm going to give you the lowdown on this technique. I mean, I have been doing this technique or a combination of it for a lot of years. You can call it the Damiki rig. Yes, the Damiki started out as a vertical rig. You could call it tight lining. We do, a lot of tight lining. You've seen videos. If you haven't, you should be watching BassGeek and go back and get caught up. Last year, we talked about both of those techniques. So what has happened over the past few years with the advent of forward facing sonar is these two techniques have converged. By these two methods combining, tight lining and the Damiki rig, what you're coming up with really isn't a new rig at all. It's the same exact setup. But what you get is new retrieve methods. And a lot of that is based off of forward facing sonar. Oh, I said the wordy dird. Oh, that's right. I said the wordy dird. Forward facing sonar, live scope. I'm just going to tell you guys, I love my Garmin. I love my forward facing sonar. And has it helped me catch more fish? Yes. Has it also made me realize how many fish I don't catch? Yes. So it kind of makes me feel like I'm a worse angler. Because if you knew how many fish you were throwing at and not catching, yeah, you'd have to question your abilities. And trust me, that thing right there makes me question my abilities. But with all that being said, has it changed the game? I'll tell you right now, the thing that I've come to realize in my tournament game this year is how much more time I need to spend staring at that thing. Has it changed tournament fishing? Yes. Has it changed the way I fish? Absolutely. Is it for better or for worse? It just is what it is to me. I mean, it's the progression, but this isn't a video about the pros, the cons, whether you love it, whether you hate it, of forward facing sonar. Let's face it, it's cashed a ton of checks. It's here. Embrace it, boycott it, you do you. It has become such a big part of what we do. This is going to be a series about the baits and the different ways that you use them. A really deep dive into baits that will help you catch more fish on forward facing sonar. Now we're going to always talk about standard bass fishing. That's never going to go away with me or on this channel. But look guys, it's a big player. It's a big part of my tournament game and of me being in tournaments. And so it's something that I have to learn, and it's something that a lot of you guys are going to learn now or later. And so I want to give you the shortcuts that I wasn't given. So let's get back to, I'm going to call it the Damiki Rig, and the reason why is because nothing else calls it a rig but the Damiki Rig. And we're here to talk about the rig, right? Not the retrieve, which is tightlining or shaking or whatever you want to call it. But like I've said in previous videos, you don't, and Jacob got this right, you don't have to have forward facing sonar to use this technique. You can use the old countdown method. You can, in wintertime, I've got a great video where it really shows and talks about tightlining, Damiki rigging. I've got a ton of videos on being able to vertical using 2D sonar. You can use 2D sonar to find schools of bait and drop this down in it. That's really where the progression has taken us. So now let me give you the lowdown. Let me give you the deets. And I'm going to tell you, this is going to be the most detailed video on this technique that I promise you will find anywhere. Everything that the pros aren't going to tell you, but through doing several interviews, shout out to my guy. By the way, we just did an interview with the guy that won the Eufaula Open. Guess what he was throwing? A Damiki Rig. He didn't want to call it a Damiki Rig. Of course, he called it the Ned Mickey or whatever it is because, he's sponsored by, and the same with, Wheeler. He's sponsored by Rapala. Is that bait any better than any other bait? No. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Wheeler talked about was the shad-like belly and the flat sides. Guess what that is? That's a 5-inch Damiki armor shad. Wow. 90% of the time when you're using this, you're going to be throwing the small versions of this, the 3-inch regular Damiki rigs. Yum makes one, I don't know, that might be like 3 1/4 or something. Those tend to be my two favorite. I lean toward the Damiki armor shad a lot. And even with that being said, you're going to get a lot of, I like to throw small swim baits and grubs. So let's talk about the rig itself, and let's talk about size, because size does matter both in weight and, bait size. This is a 5-inch armor shad. I like the 5-inch when the bass first move out to deeper water. And the reason why I like a bigger bait that time of year is because when the bass move out, the shad are done spawning and the big shad are out there. That's why I was fishing this one today. The thing about it is I was noticing that those bass were out there. They were suspended over their summer haunts. Those bigger shad are out there. I could see it on my graphs on my console. I could see it on my forward facing sonar that, you could tell the individual dots were out there. So you're not looking at a bunch of what we normally consider clouds of bait, right? You could see the cloud or the ball, but you could see dots in there. And that's when you want to do this. As we get later in the year, as it gets hotter, I do tend to downsize. So as we get into July, as we get into to August. As we get into September, I do tend to downsize because it's just less intrusive, right? The bass don't really have to think about it when you're throwing just a little bit more finesse style bait out there. And so that's when I begin to change over. And, you know, I always recommend having a couple of rods, or even, you know, putting you a quick clip on here so that you can change them out real quick, have them pre-rigged. Let the bass tell you what they want, right? Now, let's talk about head weight. This is a Damiki head, and this is a quarter. Okay, this is one of my favorite heads right here. Because it's got a good wide side profile, so it shows up good on the forward facing sonar. But I will be honest with you, nothing shows up better than tungsten. Tungsten just gives you a bright return from the time it hits the water. My go-to is the Eclipse head, again, because of that right there. It will save you baits. That screw lock will save you baits if you do it right. They go up to, I think, maybe a half. After that, I bounce back and forth between the live sonar, the Queen's tackle, and of course the Damiki. The Damiki head is always in there mixed in, just because they have great sharp hooks. This is the key to the rig. It really is the key to the rig. It is way more important in the times when they are inactive than it is when they're active. You can get it wrong when they're inactive and you can still catch fish, big fish. So trust me, this is not a little fish deal, but you have to get this right when it's tough. And it's tough right now. Just after post spawn right now, these bass are feeding primarily at night on shad that are spawning, and I'm gonna tell you, it's been tough. So the weight has had to be spot on. You have to be able to get this bait, and we'll talk about this in retrieve, to hover while you barely shake the tip. Do not overshake. Once you start overshaking, imparting too much on it, the shaking is more to help this bait just kind of stay in place instead of dropping or just moving by. A 1/8 is my starting point, but like, I'm looking currently for lighter weights than that. A 1/8 is going to be good really at about 10 to 15 feet. So a quarter you can fish, and these will overlap a little bit. You can fish from say 10, I'd say 15 to probably 20, 25 feet. Believe it or not, man. I mean, it's got to be light so that it stays right above their head or right in their face. You don't want it dropping below them. Wind and current is going to change this, okay? So wherever you're at, if you have those two factors, play with the weights. Hook size, as far as hook size goes, you know, you can get away with about a 3/0 on anything. So 2, 3, 4/0. I mean, if you're really going big, you know, you might want to get up to that 4 and 5. But 2, 3, even on the 5-inch, you know, I cut the nose down just a little bit. It worked perfect today. Now let's talk about 3/8, ½ ounce, 3/4, even all the way up to 1 ounce. Now that's where I really like to get into my tungsten. The deeper, I really need to be able to see it a long way from the transducer. And this is where the tungsten comes into play for me. 3/8, ½ ounce. I almost just skip a 3/8 and go to a ½ ounce. As the water gets colder, as we really get into the time to where those bass are out there, moved out deep during the winter time, chasing, you can fish a 1/2 ounce down to probably 25 to 35 feet. All right, without any issue. From there, this is what really cost me this year. Now this is an ounce, but I prefer a 3/4. Depending on wind, depending on current, 3/4 is probably the highest that I generally go to, and I will fish that to 55, 60 feet down. You know, we'll say 35 to 55. Now, if I've got a lot of current or wind, yes, I'm going up to the ounce. Guys, I can't stress to you, don't get the weight wrong. Don't be lazy, it's gonna cost you fish. Use that forward facing sonar to pay attention very much to where and how quickly that bait is falling. Throw it out there, see it, pay attention to the retrieve, try it a couple times. Now we're going to talk about rod, reel, and line setup. Let's talk about rod, reel, and line setup, and even right up to an ounce, I'm just going to tell you, I use spinning gear. I use spinning gear all the way up to an ounce, all right? Generally, I'm going to use 100%, I'm using my K9 braid as my main line. I like the pink better. This is older. That tells you I've had this on here forever and a day, and it tells you don't have to change it. K9 just stands up. But I like my pink. I can see it better. For the leader or the main line, and I keep a little bit longer leader, 15 feet minimum for me, is going to be the K9 Pro 100 fluorocarbon 8-pound test. Like I said, you can go to 10. You're fishing open water with this 99.9% of the time, maybe over some brush piles. This is a TFO Professional. This is kind of their budget-friendly rod, which is still an amazing combo. And I throw a 7-foot medium fast action. I think this is a ModFst, but it's more fast than mod in my opinion, and that's what I like. I do like a little faster reel. This is a Lose. It's in the 6s, so make sure you've at least got a 6. Check your reel speed on this. A 6 is the way to go. This is a Mock Crush. That's the setup. Now, let's talk about retrieves. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get accurate with your casts, okay? Start short. The cone angle is going to be short. I think it's, you know what, I'll put it right here. I don't remember, but it's not very wide. So you've got a small window to hit. So you've got to get accurate. I'll do a video on my settings for the forward facing sonar. That's definitely coming. But right now we're just talking about this technique. It is basically the tight lining technique that I showed you before. Take some time, get out there, practice your cast and seeing it. What I love about the Garmin's is I can literally see the splash of where my bait goes into the water. So if I'm missing it just a little bit, a lot of times I can just adjust to get the hottest return. In other words, the brightest return that I can get. So I just make me a cast out. And then I don't want it to drop past the bass. So I'm just going to put it out there and I'm going to slowly reel. And I'm going to twitch that rod tip about like that. Nice and slow. Because all I want that to do right there is keep that bait hovering just a little bit. Really, I'm twitching a little bit too hard right there. There we go. We just want the line. We want the line to vibrate, not, you know, do that. We want it to vibrate. Rod tip high. Now, I'm not going to sit and tell you that, you know, don't never hop it, twist it, jerk it. Hey, sometimes, man, that's what they want. And if they're in a pretty positive mood, they'll want you to do that. Sometimes I noticed today I could get a reaction out of some negative bass by dropping it right on their head. And this is the other thing about the cast. Again, accuracy, I can't stress accuracy enough. You want to drop it past them and bring it by them, or you want to drop it right on their head. So when it makes that splash, they just react. That's when you're going to get most of your bites. At least for me, that's when I get most of my bites. If I cast it short, 90% of the time, I'm not getting a bite. Especially when they're in a negative mood, they're not going to chase it down. So, but if you drop it past them and work it by, the element of surprise will help you. There's a ton of information to get you started, a ton of information that I had to come out and learn and I haven't seen anywhere else. I know it may not sound like a lot, but I'm telling you, the weight is a huge key. Being able to get it out there in front of them is a huge key. Being accurate is a huge key. It's just not as easy as everybody thinks with forward facing sonar. Throw it out there and just, man, there's a fish. Yeah, I caught that fish there. Look at that. Hey, look, there's another. I wished it was that easy. Or maybe I just suck that bad. But I think everybody else that'll do it will tell you it's not that easy. But yeah, I mean, that's it. In my opinion, it's more the rig than it is the top secret bait. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of Rapala stuff. I use a lot of Rapala stuff, but I mean, unless they're shoving something in that bait that's going to like some sort of fish call, fishy, 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 come eat me, little man, come on. I don't see it being much different than anything else. All right. I know. But guys, that's really the deal, man. I've been doing these techniques forever, been getting better with my forward facing sonar. I've had it just a little over a year now, like literally a year and 2-3 weeks. Learned the hard way on the tournaments, on the BFLs, in the mountain division, that you better be good with this because those guys sure as heck are. But guys, as always, questions, comment in the comment section below. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you guys ring that bell. 100% Watch Squad. You guys allow me to live my dream. Join that 100% Watch Squad. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do with the 100% Watch Squad is watch 100% of the video. All right. As always, you geeks rock.